Hi, my name is Victoria Petrik, and I'm going to be joined with Katrina Maass and Holly Denzer, and we are going to be going over case number 1, which is repairing jobs that fail to satisfy. Specifically, our case deals with DrainFlow, which is a commercial and residential plumbing company in the United States. So for this presentation, we will go over the brief overview of the company. Katrina will go into more details about issues that are experienced by DrainFlow, particularly the hiring practices. I will be going over current job structure and my proposal for the restructuring of DrainFlow. And finally, Holly will be touching base on training issues and will wrap up the presentation for us. So just to give you a brief overview of what DrainFlow is it's a large residential and commercial plumbing maintenance firm in the United States. So I think it's important for us to distinguish the difference between commercial plumbing and residential plumbing, as it will play a large role in how the job structure is restructured later in the presentation. So commercial plumbing is when you will have plumbers who will work on large boilers, sewer lines, lift stations, and plumbing that's used in larger industrial equipment. So for example, if a new factory is going up in town, your commercial plumbers will be the ones who are working on the different pipes for that. As opposed to the residential plumbing, where you will find plumbers who are working in single family dwellings, and usually they will do those jobs one at a time. So Lee Ronaldo is the regional manager, and for our case, when we reviewed it, it seemed that Lee is the only person in management that is mentioned for the case. So it's safe for us to assume that she is in charge of the 2,000 employees who are at DrainFlow, which causes significant issues, which we will touch base on later. And of the 2,000 employees, there's only 4 job categories at DrainFlow, and that is plumbers, plumbers assistants, order processors, and billing representatives. So I will touch base a little bit further on the different issues that each job position is experiencing in DrainFlow. So the business that DrainFlow receives comes from the yellow pages, where they can call in via phone, or they can make a request on the internet using a survey. And Holly will touch base later on this practice and why it is not working currently for DrainFlow. So the process that happens once an order is received is the order processor will listen and assign that job to either a plumber or a plumber's assistant. They will then go out and do the job and complete it, and the billing representative will send the invoice and obtain the payment. So I will touch base later in the presentation why this flow of events is not currently working for DrainFlow. So right now I'm going to be passing off the presentation to Katrina, who will be going over the larger issues in DrainFlow, and will go specifically into the hiring practices.
Hi, my name is Katrina Maass, and I'm going to be discussing the next 4 slides of case presentation number 1. As Tori stated in the previous slide, she went over the brief description of DrainFlow as well as the basic situation they are in. Some of the current issues known by DrainFlow are that surveys were sent to customers to collect information about performance, and the following results was identified. 60% of the results of customers stated that they were satisfied with their experience and would come back again. 40% felt like their experience was not good, and 30% stated that they would actually use a competitor next time. And 25% of customers actually ended in no service call because customers were confused by the questions the order processors asked and because they didn't have the knowledge or skill to explain the situation. Therefore, 1 in 4 customers who call are worse than dissatisfied. DrainFlow conducted a different survey a couple years ago to determine worker attitudes. The results showed that employees were less than satisfied than workers in other comparable jobs. DrainFlow uses a job structure to keep costs as low as possible, but while using specialization. However, the employees depend on others to perform at their efficient levels. Employees at DrainFlow state that the most frequent complaints were about response time and cost, meaning that the wrong person was sent to the job. For instance, a plumber's assistant cannot complete a plumber's job, so the appointment has to be rescheduled, wasting time of customers and employees. This also works the other way. The order processors have surveys that they have to fill out, so they don't necessarily know the specifics of a plumbing situation. The billing representatives handle the payment at the end, so they can potentially get unhappy customers who have had a bad experience previously, but the billing representatives don't necessarily know what they are referring to. This shows that each areas have a lack in customer service training and the communication between departments. The current hiring procedures also rely on unstructured interviews with each location's general manager. Little consistency is also found in how they select employees. Now, reviewing all of the issues at DrainFlow, we took a step back and looked at the broader issues that we found. And all of those issues are listed here. Unequal pay, meaning that plumbers make the highest wages at the company and the assistants make 1/4 of what the plumber makes. Order processors make even less than that, but then about the same as billing processors. There's job structure inconsistencies, meaning that there are only 4 current positions within DrainFlow, and that doesn't meet the current needs of employees or customers, and Tori will actually talk about that in the following slides. There's a lack of communication. And actually, there's a great quote that expresses the current situation at DrainFlow with this. When there's a breakdown in the communication process, it creates the perfect atmosphere for confusion. This is where finger pointing begins. Everyone is blaming someone else for something that was not handled correctly. As stated in the previous slide, there's non-standardized hiring practices, there's insufficient training, there's a lack of job satisfaction. This is shown why the survey that conducted the DrainFlow worker attitudes that showed they were less satisfied than workers in other comparable jobs. And this leads to the change management avoidance. Ronaldo has been the manager for 2 years now, and she's only now reviewing further changes and actions to motivate her employees. And I do also believe that a lot of the employees here are aware of the issues, but they haven't done anything to change or improve their work environment. Of all of the issues discussed previously, we picked the top 3 most important, and we'll discuss those in the following slides. The first one being the current hiring practices. So currently DrainFlow has unstructured interviews. They have minimal consistency in how employees select their employees. Therefore, they have a non-standardized hiring process, and they're unsuccessfully matching their skill set to the job description. We are not aware that they have no assessment team because they state that the only person interviewing them is a general manager. We don't know the strategies that they use to gain candidate recruitment, and we are unknown of the screening procedures that they have to hire employees. We don't believe there's no community input on the hiring process because, again, the only one that we believe is doing the search is the general manager. And we also don't believe that they have incorrect staffing needs because they only have those 4 positions that we talked about previously. So how do we resolve those issues that we have identified specific to hiring? Well, first would be to determine the ultimate staffing needs. Therefore, we need to review the job structure for the entire company and really make sure that that works for everyone and all needs are being addressed. Therefore, along with the job structure, we would need to match the accurate skills to each job description. So if the customer training is needed throughout various areas, we need to make sure that we have that listed as a skill in their job descriptions. We should develop an assessment team to review the employees and screening process, so it's not just one person reviewing like a general manager. It should be a number of different employees and individuals throughout the entire firm to interview that person to make a uniform decision that they are the correct individual for that position. Therefore, we should also include community input as needed. This may not necessarily be needed for lower positions, but for higher management positions, community input is always recommended to have that, because not always do you see what the community would need unless you bring citizens and other community members in. We would also want to review the internal and external recruitment strategies. How are they reaching out to gain people to apply to their position. How are they doing their marketing or recruiting those candidates for the position? We would need to develop a routine screening process that was uniform throughout every location and company so that everything is the same and standardized. We would need structured interviews, meaning that we would need to have, say, a phone interview, and then after that a face-to-face interview, and maybe possibly a follow-up interview with interview questions that would be standard and uniform for different positions, or maybe would change according to the positions, and so forth. We would need a fair selection of employees. So this would apply to how you would offer the position, and how every position would be a fair offering to them. And therefore, ultimately, throughout all this, we would need a standardized hiring procedures, meaning that every search that they would have to go through would have to follow the same structure and same layout, so that no one would have essentially a bias over another position.
Thanks, Katrina. So this is Victoria again, and I'm going to be going over the job structure that's being utilized at DrainFlow, and then I will be talking about my proposal for the restructuring of the job structure at DrainFlow. So as we mentioned earlier, there are 2,000 total employees, and there's only 4 job categories. And these are the plumbers, the plumber assistants, the order processors, and the billing representatives. The one person in management is Lee Ronaldo, who's the general manager. And so far, her main incentive at DrainFlow has been to keep costs low. And she has been trying to achieve this by maintaining specialization in the company, which we are seeing has immense problems with each of the job categories. So one of the main issues that DrainFlow is having among its employees is there's starting to be a lot of task overlap, or there might be the opposite problem where the buck is being passed on to the next person in line, and the customers are frustrated and they might pass it on to one of the employees at DrainFlow. And if that buck is getting passed to the next person, the person that is coming to might not be aware of the frustrations that the customer was having in the previous steps at DrainFlow. So it is causing an immense problem with each of the positions. Each position at DrainFlow does not know the job requirements of the other positions, which is another large issue. According to a journal article titled The Lives and Deaths of Jobs, Technical Interdependence and Survival in a Job Structure, the contractor's role is necessary, but the tasks they perform look quite different from those performed by any one of the jobs they coordinate. This implies that the interdependence inherent in such jobs will be poorly measured in task overlap. So this is what we're starting to see in DrainFlow. And in the next slide, I'm going to be going over the frustrations that each job specialization is experiencing in JobFlow at the current point in time. So these are the current frustrations that we're seeing with each company position at DrainFlow. So to start with, the plumbers are frustrated when they're called out for easy plumbing fixes. And I want to bring you back to the difference between the commercial plumbing and the residential plumbing that we discussed in the beginning of the presentation. So for plumbers who are doing commercial jobs, these require more testing and inspection, which is a reason why the plumbers are more qualified than the plumbing assistants. And a lot of times the commercial plumbers will get called out onto jobs such as factories that need to be completed in a certain time limit. So for example, if a factory needs to be completed in 24 hours, the commercial plumber needs to get that job done ASAP. And if they're being called to a residential job where a plumbing assistant could easily do the job, it causes frustration with the plumbers because they could have been utilizing their services elsewhere. So the plumbing assistants are getting frustrated when the customers complain that they're not getting a legit plumber. It's causing low morale with the plumbing assistants. They feel that they're not wanted or not needed, and it's causing a lot of frustration for them. They also don't know everything that a licensed plumber knows. So if a residential job does require a little bit more looking into that a professional plumber might need to look at. The plumbing assistants get the brunt of the frustration that the customer feels because they didn't receive a legit plumber, but maybe being charged for the services that a plumber would be providing as opposed to the services that a plumbing assistant is providing. So the order processors are frustrated that the customers don't utilize the online survey and they aren't being specific enough with the issues that they're having. Now they understand that not everybody has intelligence about their pipe and plumbing issues, but there is a certain degree that customers can be a little bit more specific, and also not utilizing the online survey. It's becoming an issue because a lot of customers don't even know that there is an online survey. So when they are calling and maybe describing the issues to the order processors, they are maybe not getting all of the full details, which can also cause frustrations for the plumber or the plumber assistants when they get the requests because they are not getting all the information that's required. And lastly, the billing representatives are becoming increasingly frustrated that customers do not want to pay for the services that they were provided, and they complain when the services that are provided were not up to their satisfaction. Either the plumber was not able to complete the job, or they were sent a plumbing assistant instead of a licensed plumber, or the order was not correctly processed. So as you can see, there are a lot of frustrations that are going along with each of these job specializations. So how do we address the issues in regard to the job structure at DrainFlow at the current moment? So right now, all 2,000 employees are reporting their issues to the general manager, who is Lee Ronaldo, and this simply isn't working. It's not humanly possible for Lee to address all of the issues that each job position is experiencing in a timely manner. And this also takes her away from the other tasks that she needs to accomplish as the general manager. So DrainFlow needs to have a new plan. So my first thought when I was reading this case analysis is there simply aren't enough jobs, and there isn't enough diversity in the company, especially for one that's this size and scale. So they need a new strategy and they need a new plan. So this is the proposal that I have for the job structure at DrainFlow. So at the top, we'll see the Chief Executive Officer, and this will be the president of DrainFlow. And he will work closely with the people who are in yellow, which is the executive team. And the team that's in yellow will be the respective voices for the people who are in teal and blue categories. And they will meet with the CEO either once or twice a month to kind of discuss what's going on in those respective departments. What's working, what's not working, coming up with some new ideas, and just being the general voice for the people who are in those teal and blue categories. So first we have the Chief Operations Officer, and the plumbing supervisor and the plumbers and the plumbing assistants will report to the COO. So the plumbers, we are going to mostly keep doing the commercial jobs, which I discussed earlier in the presentation as being the bigger factory kind of jobs. And the plumbing assistants will mostly be working on those single family dwellings. And if need be, one or two plumbers will be able to work with the plumbing assistants if the job seems a little bit more complicated than what they had initially thought. So as you can see, I also added a marketing team and an advertising team. And I think it's important for me to define both of them, just because they are commonly misconstrued as being the same thing, and they are not the same thing. So the definition of marketing is preparing a product or service for the marketplace, and advertising is making your product or service known to your audience or the marketplace. So why are these important for DrainFlow? Well, they're both incredibly important. So the marketing team is important because it comes up with new ideas and inventions and technologies that are being used in the plumbing industry. And this was something I actually wanted to look in and research and figure out kind of what is new in the plumbing business, because I myself am not an expert of that category. So some of the new technologies that I found in plumbing are the touchless faucets, the tankless water heaters, the smart irrigation systems, and the leak detectors. So the marketing team will meet up and come up with new strategies of what DrainFlow can do to kind of stay on top, what they can do to be a competitor in the industry, and this is incredibly important, just to make sure you're staying competitive and that you're offering the best and most innovative services that you can to your customers. Now, the advertising team will be obviously doing the advertising part of it. So they will be doing this through avenues such as the newspaper, magazines, direct mail, TV, radio, and online surveys. So right now, as Katrina talked about, most of the business that they are doing is through the yellow pages, which is an incredibly outdated form of doing advertising. Most people have cell phones and computers these days and will look up numbers and information that way. Another way that DrainFlow is utilizing the advertising is doing the online surveys, which is helping in a way, but not as much as it could be, because a lot of customers don't even know that there's online surveys out there. So a lot of order processors are spending a lot of time on the phone with clients. So this new job structure will help develop a routine. And I also forgot to mention the director of the human relations. So they will be reporting to the customer service reps and the order processors. And the director of human relations will also be working with the other respective departments when it comes to hiring, because they will also be the human resources person as well. So going back, the job structure will help develop a routine for DrainFlow, which is incredibly important. According to the article, The Life and Death of Jobs, Technical Interdependence and Survival in a Job Structure, S. Hassan writes, organizations that have better established routines outperform other organizations, in part because they spend less effort and resources on monitoring and disputes over who should do what work. So unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of that in DrainFlow, right now, where there just isn't clear job descriptions of what each position is supposed to be doing, and the buck is getting passed on to the next person, which is creating huge problems. So what specific issues is this new job structure helping with DrainFlow? Well, first it helps with the hiring. So the managers that are in the yellow tabs will know what is required of the job title and will know what specific skill set is needed in order for an employee to perform that specific job. It helps DrainFlow gain recognition and market products, which is something that DrainFlow is not utilizing right now. And it's incredibly important. It's important to get your name out there and to stay on top of the competition in order for your business to thrive as much as it could. And it also helps overall morale. So the employees know what's expected of them because there's specific job descriptions, and they'll have a supervisor who will be able to provide feedback for them. And employers are hiring capable and confident employees. According to a journal article titled When and Why High Performers Feel Job Dissatisfaction, a Resource Flow Approach, Jay Park writes, work stress relating from role overload is the primary reason that high performers feel job dissatisfaction and leave their current positions to work at another firm, despite rewards that are offered at their current organizations. And this is something that's in jeopardy for DrainFlow right now. There's just a lot of work overload that each of the categories is experiencing, and it's becoming a significant problem. So now that I've gone over the proposed job structure for DrainFlow, I'm going to pass it off to Holly, who is going to be talking about training for DrainFlow and her proposal for the solutions.
Hi everyone, this is Holly Denzer, finishing out the presentation with Katrina and Tori for case number 1. In addition to the hiring practices and the job structure at DrainFlow, we also identified some issues with training, in particular the order processors. They listen to the description of the problem from customers and decide to send either a plumber or a plumber's assistant, but are not trained well enough to know which one to send, many times sending the wrong one. And Katrina had kind of brushed on this in a previous slide. The order processors have a standard form to go off from when diagnosing that issue, and many of them can't deviate from what's on the form and still be helpful. The employees in general aren't trained in customer service and are hesitant to speak directly with customers, making it awkward and not very friendly, and resulting in no service call. The lack of training is hurting the bottom line with declining sales and disgruntled customers. So we came up with a proposed training program for drain flow, which would include a first day orientation. The first half of the day would be it'd be in class with an instructor, and that instructor would go over basic expectations, the company history and values, company-wide policies, and of course the perks of working at DrainFlow. The second half of the day would include training modules at the workers' workstations, and this would be more job specific, but it would go over basic skills, technical skills, problem solving skills, interpersonal skills, and civility training. All are important, and you can find out more about those different types of training in the book. And then in addition to that first day, there would be annual and biannual refresher courses to maintain those training levels, and that would help with new technologies or new processes at DrainFlow. It would also cover the harassment prevention, fire and evacuation plans, emergency procedures, and everything else that annual training would be good for. So in addition to the smaller breakouts of the issues at DrainFlow, covering the possible solutions for the hiring, the job structure, and the training, overall to fix DrainFlow, we came up with an incentive system that might motivate the employees to want to do better and increase the sales and increase customer satisfaction. And basically, incentive systems are in place so employees can get a bonus for doing a good job. All of these options are, they base a portion of an employee's pay on some individual or organizational measure of performance. And these incentives can be paid annually or when the employee meets that benchmark. And some of those options would be profit sharing, skills-based pay, piece rate pay, stock options, merit-based pay, or gain sharing. The only one that's not applicable in this case is piece rate pay. Since we're not in production making products or solid goods to sell, it's just not applicable. Out of all of those incentive programs, we are going to pick gain sharing because this requires specific improvements in performance and can be applied to all job categories, not just the order processors. The improvements could focus on increased productivity, higher sales, or lower expenses. So for example, in the increased productivity, we could have a bonus given to the order processors if more jobs have been received. So if more customers called back for service, they could get a bonus for that. And for increased sales, that would mean that there's fewer disgruntled customers and increased callbacks. The lower expenses would be decreasing the amount of time that plumbers were sent out when a plumber's assistant would have been okay, or sending a plumber's assistant when a plumber was needed, because then the customer is double billed and sometimes doesn't pay. This is motivating for an employee because those employees have a stake in the success of the company, and this would affect all employees, not just some of them. And overall, I think that would, well, we as a group think that would be the best idea, and it's kind of in line with the existing management's perspective on what should happen. So in summary, the problems we identified are non-standardized hiring practices, job structure inconsistencies, insufficient training, amongst a few others. And then our best solution that we identified is gain sharing. The end outcome is happy employees, higher profits, and an increased bottom line. Here's our work cited. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and we will try our best to answer. Thank you for watching Case 1 from Holly, Katrina, and Tori.